Being a language learner myself and having 10 and maybe even more years of experience behind me, it sometimes feels like I have seen all kinds of advice there can be on language learning, starting from how to memorize vocabulary faster and ending with how to set up your study area. Nowadays, we're just surrounded by hundreds of language learning bloggers or influencers that bring fairly useful tips and advice. But some of those tips sometimes seem to be quite ridiculous. In this video, I have gathered for you some of the most popular language study tips that you can stop paying attention to. Let's have a look at them, shall we? Now, talking about toxic tips on language learning, it turns out now that I am myself going to bring you some of my personal advice. So I guess you can, I'd even say you should, think of it as my personal point of view on language learning that I have figured out, that I have discovered dealing with for now, foreign languages. But anyways, I guess it'll be interesting for you. I'd like to start with something that is now at its peak of popularity: podcasts. I am afraid to think of how many times I have seen and heard this word so far. Podcasts are everywhere, made on every topic, made by everybody. Podcasts have come into the field of language learning too. It's not that I think that podcasts are bad or something. No, but I am pretty certain you have seen many times in those so-called study vlogs how a person wakes up more likely at 5 or 6 a.m. and starts a perfect study routine right away with a podcast in his or her target language, listening to the podcast while having a shower, while having breakfast, while doing their morning exercises. In a nutshell, it seems like a perfect study routine all day long. But the most important part here is it only seems like. You don't have to do the same, okay? Listening to the podcasts the whole day somewhere in the background while doing your other stuff will not give you much and will probably give you nothing. Instead of listening to a podcast, even in the language that you're trying to master, while doing some other stuff, while brushing your teeth, or while having breakfast, I highly recommend you to do this instead. Do all that in silence, being face to face, so to speak, with your own thoughts. And then, during the day, pick up a 30-minute break to dedicate fully to your target language. If you feel lonely in the mornings and just need somebody talking in the background, then okay, it's your choice. But please, let's remember that nowadays we are living in the world of constant noise. We are literally always surrounded by noises and sounds. So it's really important to let our brain have a rest, sometimes stay in peace, so that later it'll be able to consume even more information during your study sessions, and it will more likely be able to remember, to memorize all those words, all that information that you want to keep in your mind much faster and easier. You must have heard of such a concept as, if you want to learn a foreign language faster and speak it fluently, just go to the country where that language is spoken and live there for some time. That's something logical, isn't it? If we all had a chance, we would immediately go to the country of our target language that will even make us dive into that atmosphere of the culture of our target languages. But let's also remember that it's not going to work as a magic pill that will make us master the language. And it's not something that each of us can afford either. It is totally possible to master a language at home by yourself. Now, I must say, learning a language with a tutor is just perfect. I am a tutor myself, after all. My task is to make the study process of my students much easier, much faster than whether they were learning by themselves. Having a language tutor is fun, super helpful, and time-saving for sure. But if you are sure in your abilities to find right materials, to find free time, to stay consistent, which requires some strictness towards yourself, then you are totally able to learn, to master a language by yourself at home. By the way, if you'd like to know more of my thoughts on this topic, please do watch this video I've made recently. You might find a lot of interesting ideas for you too. Before we continue, please let me remind you that every video you watch on my channel I make by myself and with a lot of care. So if you'd like to support my work, you can do it by sending me a little donation, or else become a member of Language Lover or Bookworm Levels and get a bunch of monthly, unique and really interesting stuff from me. I've also got a shop where you can purchase some beautiful handmade notebooks or pencil cases and some other stuff that I make myself too. That's also an amazing sign of your support to my channel and my work as a whole. One of the most popular language learning tools remains to be language learning apps. I'm sure every of you knows some, or even maybe using a couple of them. Now you may ask, so what's wrong with language learning apps? And I'll tell you, nothing's wrong, nothing at all. Even though I'm not a big fan of language learning apps, I can tell you for sure they may be a great resource for language learning. The problem is that there are some people who really believe that it's totally possible to learn a language, or at least say to reach A2 level just by using such apps, which is not true at all. It's fair to say that usually under such a misconception for people who start learning their first ever foreign language. While being a great addition to our language study routine, language learning apps only won't be enough. Reading, listening, writing, there are so many things that we should do to reach even A2 level of a language. A language learning app only won't help you. What such apps will be handy for is some passive learning and memorizing new vocabulary. When talking specifically about language learning, I can't live without mentioning such kinds of pictures that I simply hate. I always tell about them to all of my students. You can find these kinds of pictures all over the internet, and there are even YouTube videos on such topics. And don't get me wrong, sometimes, some of them, they are of a great help, but usually they are over-exaggerated and show just a random set of synonymous phrases that don't make any sense at all. We must remember to distinguish formal and informal speech, which such pictures usually lack. So next time you see a picture that says, stop saying this specific phrase and say this instead, you should just, I wouldn't say ignore it. After all, it's really important to know, to get acquainted with all those synonymous phrases, synonymous verbs. But I'm only asking you to remember that those simple phrases are totally fine to use too. Just look at your colloquial speech in your native language. Do you use any formal collocations while talking to your family members? Hardly ever. Colloquial speech is all about simplicity and shortness. And while it is important to be acquainted with all those formal collocations and other phrases, please don't be afraid to use those simple, at first glance, widespread phrases and words. Sometimes saying just a simple thank you in any foreign language will be much better than saying, I don't know, I thank you most warmly. Now let's talk about the study routine itself, daily study routine to be precise. There are many language bloggers who show their personal approaches to studying daily, which I don't really like, even though every learner might have their personal point of view of what a daily study routine really is. Now, just remember this. You don't need to have a literally daily study routine, okay? You don't need to have that routine where you sit at your desk every day for an hour or two doing grammar, memorizing words, and so on. If you ask me, if I myself have a daily study routine, I would say it depends on what you understand by a daily study routine. Because for me, a language study routine is not only about grammar, it's not only about memorizing new vocabulary, but it's also about journaling in my target language, listening to music, reading. My personal view on this is that you'll be able to have a great language study session only when you're in the right mood for it, only when it brings you joy, only when you enjoy this actual learning. Now, of course, you may ask me, what if I'm never in the right mood for it? How should I study if I never feel like it? Well, then I would just tell you that you should probably ask yourself, why do I need to learn this language? Why did I start in the first place? Because maybe you're just wasting your time. Maybe you don't even need to study any foreign language. That happens too. Don't be afraid to take a rest sometimes. It's totally fine to have a study session one day and then come back to your target language in 2-3 days, because having a literally daily study routine without letting yourself having 2-3 days off is really, it's over exaggerated. Last thing I would like to mention today is that we shouldn't be afraid of old-fashioned approaches to language learning. A very popular thing nowadays is also using flashcards to memorize new vocabulary, the method of which has been talked a lot lately by a lot of people. It doesn't work for me though. I still prefer to take those handwritten notes to create my own vocabulary lists in my notebooks. Quite outdated, right? But you know what? I don't care, because as long as it works out for me, it's just fine. Even if it might take some more time to write a, let's say, vocabulary list instead of just creating a simple flashcard, I don't care, because I'm not in a hurry. I take these old-fashioned approaches as something that can also entertain me. That's why I recommend you to forget about how to learn languages faster and pay more attention to how to learn languages in a fun way, which of course will depend on your personal preferences. To sum up, what I have tried to prove to you today is that it's impossible to find a unique or the most correct way of how to lead a language learning process. If you just start to copy everything indiscriminately without asking yourself, does it work for me? Do I really need to do this? Do I really need to listen to this podcast? Do I really have to stop saying these simple phrases and go to these more advanced phrases? If you do this, then your own study routine will turn into a little nightmare. Your head will be muddled, you will be confused. Do we need that? I don't think so. The bad news is that nowadays we are exposed to a lot of unnecessary information. The good news is we are still able to filter it. So please don't be afraid to learn a language in your own way, even if that way is totally different from how popular polyglots do it. If you think this video was worth your time, then please give it a like and subscribe, of course. Join our little community of language lovers. Be sure to join my free newsletter on my website to get notified about latest updates on Language Easy. See you in the next one.